Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast, episode 29, the Cal Raleigh episode. How do you like that?
Oh, big
Very
dumper.
fitting for what we're going to talk about today. We are going to run through our all underrated team for the MLB. I'll give you the parameters for that. We are also going to go through our Minnesota Twins / Washington Senators Mount Rushmore. It was a tough one, that is for sure. We're going to kick things off by talking about the Super Bowl. We know we're doing this a little bit later, but with one episode every 2 weeks, we still got to talk about the big game. It was Kansas City walking away with the win 38-35 in a really fun game to watch. It was a good Super Bowl. We've had back-to-back really fun Super Bowls.
Yes.
This one was an interesting battle, Jacob. The Chiefs, you and I both picked them to win. It wasn't that big flashy performance from Patrick Mahomes, but he still had a pretty darn good game. The ankle at times looked like it was going to really cause him some issues, but everyone stepped up in a big way. Travis Kelce had a big game, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs going to walk away with another Super Bowl title.
Yeah, I was looking back at our predictions there, and you were only 8 points off, and I was only 4 points off, and that's pretty good being how Vegas was about 20 points off. Yeah. So I was feeling pretty good about that. But yeah, I just kind of broke it down per team, and it was a very, very fun game. Both teams really went out there swinging, and it just seemed like the Chiefs were able to bring it home. So yeah, I'll start with the Eagles and what they were doing, and I'll start with Jalen Hurts because he was absolutely on fire. I mean, he had over 300 yards and a touchdown through the air, another 70 yards, and 3 different touchdowns on the ground. I mean, that's just incredible. Other than that one big fumble mistake that went for a scoop and score, he played this game like he's been doing it for years. He was smart, he was accurate, he was good, and he was lucky at times. And most of the time, that's enough to win that big of a game. And so that was really fun to watch. He set and tied a lot of Super Bowl records. You couldn't ask for more out of your quarterback.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts absolutely balled out. I mean, 304 passing yards, had that touchdown. Like you mentioned, 3 rushing touchdowns. He was pretty much the team. And for a guy who a lot of people had question marks coming out of college for, I'm always hesitant personally on those Alabama quarterbacks. For him, it was a little bit different because we got to see him go play at Oklahoma too. Another place where people are hesitant on their quarterbacks because of that offensive system. But this guy looks like he is going to be an NFL starter for a long time. Hopefully he's able to avoid any injuries. Of course, with those rushing quarterbacks, one leg injury, and all of a sudden it feels like everything's derailed. We've seen that with multiple guys throughout their careers. Hurts, though, an absolute superstar in the making. Did he get snubbed for an MVP? Maybe. He had my vote, but you can't really argue too much against Patrick Mahomes. But Hurts, incredible performance. I want to start. I know you're going from the quarterback to more of the receivers and running backs. I want to start with the running backs here because this is where I think this game was different. For the Philadelphia Eagles, you take away what Jalen Hurts did on the ground. He had 15 carries, 70 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Aside from him, these running backs, 17 carries, 45 yards. That is unacceptable in a Super Bowl. You got to have more of a run game. Miles Sanders was supposed to be the guy all season, 7 carries for 16 yards. Kenneth Gainwell, 7 carries for 21 yards. You need more out of a run game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and when you compare that to what the Chiefs did on the ground, 26 carries for 158 yards as a team. Of course, the primary back, Isaiah Pacheco, 15 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. The Eagles didn't have enough firepower on the ground. Everyone knew it was going to be the Jalen Hurts show, whether they were passing or running the ball. So I'd like to see some improvement from the Eagles backfield heading into next season.
Yeah, all 3 of Philly's running backs combined for about half of Jalen's yardage. And that's not going to work because there were quite a few different drives where some solid downhill running could have come in handy and extended those, keep them out of 3rd and 4th down situations. So you really nailed it there. That's where the game really started to differ, was that lack of running game. Back to the passing and receivers. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, just an incredible duo. Smith hit that century mark, set Jalen up for a couple of those short running touchdowns, and AJ Brown, I've just been fearing hearing his name all year round because of fantasy. He just killed me all year.
Yeah.
He started the game out hot. He didn't slow down. And Goddard stayed toe to toe with Kelsey all
Yeah,
game, too. I
absolutely.
mean, you cannot say enough good things about the tight end that he's becoming. So, I mean, receiving through the air in general, Eagles really showed up ready to play.
And I'm glad you talked about Goddard. I think he's one of the more underappreciated tight ends. He's filled in for Zach Ertz, and it doesn't feel like the Eagles
Right.
tight end position has missed a beat. He did miss some time this season, which I think maybe throws off his stats a little bit when people are looking at that. But Devontae Smith was the standout for me. I mean, this guy came on so strong when AJ Brown went down with an injury, and it felt like because of that, the Eagles receiving court got even better because all of a sudden Hurts and Smith had this camaraderie. They could work well together. And we've been seeing it since week one what Hurts and AJ Brown can do. AJ Brown is a freak. That was a steal of a trade for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Got him out of my
Home run,
division. I'm
knocked it
good
out of
with
the
it.
park. Yeah. I wish he would have gotten to Green Bay, but he's just a freak of nature. Devontae, that duo is going to be scary for a long time, especially as long as Jalen Hurts is throwing them the football.
Yep, absolutely. And then we get to the defense, and that was the surprising factor of the entire game because they are not the first elite defense to get cut up by the Chiefs, and they won't be the last. But I mean, they were the number one defense in the NFC. They couldn't force a turnover. They couldn't get a sack. They couldn't get the stops they needed. And if you're going to beat Mahomes, you have got to make him commit some mistakes. And that did not happen at all that game.
Yeah, they only had 5 QB hits in that entire game. You got to jack that number up. If you just let Patrick Mahomes sit back and be comfortable, you're just asking for him to tear you up. You're lucky you only gave up 38 points because Mahomes just dominant. Again, this defense, very strong. Of course, that one holding call at the end of the game, which no matter what you think of the call, everyone is well aware it was a hold. It was just how the game was called. If you have a problem with it, it was a tough game, but it was a lot to ask. You're not going to slow down the Chiefs like you just mentioned too much, especially, that's the big thing is the pass rush was not there at all for Philly.
Yeah. Props to the Chiefs offensive line. I love the no sacks, 0 sacks shirts that they were wearing in their parade. That was pretty great. So let's get on to the Chiefs because I mean they won the game. And if there was anyone in the world who could have kept up with Jalen's fantastic game, it was Patty Mack. I mean, 226 total yards, 3 touchdowns, 131.8 passer rating. You're not going to lose too many games with a passer rating like that. And just like I mentioned, 0 turnovers. That really, really helps because it seems like Patrick's weakness is if he gets jarbled, if he starts committing mistakes. And I was worried when that ankle started hurting that might be the chaos that he needed to really not be in sync. But no, he stepped it up, especially in the second half, and took home his second Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, incredible performance. And he finally broke that curse of winning an MVP and not winning the Super Bowl. He did that first one since Kurt Warner. So really broke that curse. Yeah, the numbers, again, don't jump out at you. 182 passing yards, but you mentioned the passer rating, 131.8. Had 44 rushing yards on a very bad ankle. That ankle was not 100%. Really strong game. And you hit the nail right on the head. It was coming down to can't turn the ball over. Hurts only had one. It was a pretty big one, though, while Patrick Mahomes protected the football, let his offense do the thing. And he trusted his punter, really, in some situations where, hey, we got to go punter and defense. Let our defense go to work. So he didn't try and force anything. It was Patrick Mahomes kind of stepping out of the spotlight a little bit, it felt like, not trying to do too much, make those flashy plays, which I think makes the Chiefs even more dangerous when he's able to do that.
Yeah, if he's just sitting there and patient, letting plays develop instead of that shortstop sidearm making either it's a great play or it's a terrible mistake, and it ends up being great plays more often than not. But in a game like this, you want to minimize those mistakes. So, and then no surprise, the X factor of the Chiefs receiving core is the best tight end in the league. I mean, Kelsey had 6 grabs on 6 targets, no less, for 81 yards and a touchdown. That is insane for a tight end to have that many yards after catch, and he does it all the time. And his insanity just doesn't end. And don't get me wrong, Juju helped them get down the field. He had 53 yards on his own. And then rookie Sky Moore, short 4-yard touchdown on his only target of the game. And then unknown Kadarius Toney nabbing a short touchdown and then pairing it with his ridiculous record-breaking, ankle-breaking punt return for 65 yards, Super Bowl record.
And I'm going to go ahead and disagree with what you just talked about with Kadarius Toney, but I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, Travis Kelce, special game, 6 catches, 6 targets, has a touchdown, 81 yards. He's the lifeblood of this team. He's the energizer, really, for the Chiefs. Juju, I don't like him at all, but he had a strong performance. 7 catches, 53 yards. That's a really, really strong game. You can't compare him to Devontae Smith and to A.J. Brown. They play different roles. Kadarius Toney, again, the X factor. I'm not going to say he was unknown. I think he was more infamous, known for all the wrong reasons, because he stunk with the Giants. Everyone knew him as being, hey, if you're seeing this post, you have as many catches as a first-round draft pick this year. He really has stepped up since joining Kansas City. They're letting him show his athleticism a little bit more than he had. I think the Chiefs' mentality offensively helps make Kadarius Toney more effective than he ever would have been in New York. That's no shot at Brian Daboll. Daboll had a really strong year as the head coach. It's just Andy Reid's able to see those guys, see their potential, and bring it out of them. I mean, we see this constantly with these guys. We saw it with Jerick McKinnon this year as well, Isaiah Pacheco. He just knows how to unlock that key thing, and that punt return was the game for the Chiefs.
Absolutely. And then you've mentioned Pacheco. I mean, he set a pace for the Chiefs all game long. 76 yards and a touchdown. Mahomes and McKinnon had 44 and 34 respectively to add to that. And then Sky Moore had a carry for 4 yards. I mean,
4-yard specialist.
Exactly. And so Chiefs just dominated in the run game, which is fascinating because you look at time of possession going the Eagles' way, and if you just looked at that box score, you wouldn't have assumed that. But that's what they were able to do.
And 6.1 was their average yards per carry for the Chiefs. That is a very, very strong number.
All 4 rushing ball handlers. I think Sky Moore barely missed Jalen, but besides Sky Moore missing Jalen, all 4 of the Chiefs guys averaged more than all 4 of the Eagles guys. It's not a good look for the Eagles.
It's a little tough for Sky Moore too. He just had the 1 carry. So it's not like he got the second chance opportunities. But I mean, it's not like Kansas City was busting off some big runs. They had a couple big ones, 24 yards for Pacheco, 26 for Patrick Mahomes, but it was just taking those little bites, setting up the passing attack. It wasn't the big play offense we're used to seeing from the Chiefs. A lot of that, Tyreek Hill gone. He was kind of their big play guy. Kelce can obviously have those big plays, but it's more yards after catch in his case. Isaiah Pacheco fits that role that the Chiefs need so badly. Just that yard, going to go out and churn out yards. That's what he does. He's a strong physical back. He's a great fit for the system. Unfortunately, probably means the end of the line for Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City. But Isaiah Pacheco, he's going to be a popular man next season in Kansas City.
Yep, absolutely. And he hangs on to the ball, which when we were looking at Helaire develop, that was one of the issues that we saw. So, but what really got to me this game, again, was the defense. And the Chiefs' defense was just the pinnacle of smart defensive play. It wasn't overpowering. It wasn't shocking. It wasn't even really lucky. It was just solid, smart defense all game long. There were a couple sacks on Jalen, again, one leading to that big fumble recovery for a touchdown. But they just did their jobs and they let their offense do what their offense can always do. And they were on the field a lot. So to keep that up with such a potent offense like the Eagles, I was very impressed.
Yeah, we knew what you meant. Yeah, they had the 2 sacks on defense, the turnover in the ball game. Nick Bolton, that scoop and score. They almost had another one. If Nick Bolton would have got it in that second one, I mean, you would have just given him MVP. 2 touchdowns by a defensive player. You got to give it to him. Creed Humphrey is the one who forced that fumble, so we got to shout him out too. But I mean, it's just unknown names on this defense for Kansas City. Looking through their roster, I mean, Willie Gay, Justin Reed, you obviously know Chris Jones. But I mean, a lot of these guys are still young guys. George Karlaftis, right. He absolutely balled out. Jalen Watson, go Cougs. He gets a Super Bowl ring. Needed a wheelchair after the celebration, the real Coug way there. Trent McDuffie out of UW had a strong rookie season. I mean, it's just these guys that are still learning, that are just going to get better. And if the Chiefs can have a balanced, slow pace, methodical offense with a defense that can go out there and hold their opponents to under 30 points a game, because that's been an issue for Kansas City, believe it or not.
Right.
This is not going to be the last Chiefs Super Bowl we see in the next 5 years.
And it's a dynasty that I can actually enjoy watching. So I'm good with it.
Give it time. Only one missed kick in the entire Super Bowl. We won't really talk about that because Harrison Butker
it was a
then made up for it.
It wasn't a huge miss. It was right there, and the whole bar went silent. I don't know. Did you watch at home or did you go out?
We went to Sean's. We watched the game at Sean's.
Okay, so this was the first time in a long time I went out to watch the Super Bowl, and we went to a sports bar right in downtown Ensenada, Mexico, and it was great, but that place felt silent when that kick hit the upright. So it was good to see him redeem himself. Yeah, actually all but one guy, the guy behind the bar, they were all wearing Chiefs gear. So it was a lot of fun.
I like it. I like them really taking a stand. So we can't just finish by talking about the football stuff. We got to talk about what makes the Super Bowl special. We're going to skip through the commercials because they absolutely stunk. I will stand by that. I don't know if anyone else enjoyed them.
So
you're lucky.
Like I said, sports bar in Ensenada, it was Mexican commercials, and they did not get the memo that they were supposed to be special whatsoever. So I guess
neither did the commercials broadcast in America. Yeah. So there was one good commercial where it was a battle of beer brands. I think it was Coors and Bud fighting for whose ad it was, and all of a sudden at the end it was a Blue Moon ad the whole time. That one was enjoyable, but other than that, it was that was the best one right there.
Okay,
but the halftime show. Let's talk about the halftime show.
Okay. Well, we're not music critics. We're sports guys, but we'll give our 2 cents and see if anyone wants them.
I absolutely loved Rihanna. I think it was. I didn't know I knew that many Rihanna songs. I was having a good old time listening to Rihanna, and for her to go out there and perform pregnant, that's got to be the first time anyone's ever performed the halftime show pregnant. I didn't check the stats, didn't check the history, but I feel very confident that is the case. She rocked it. She didn't try to do too much. I'm not necessarily a big fan when they bring all the other people out with them. I think it was a pretty solid halftime show. It's not going to be one of the greatest of all time, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the positives. Set list was fantastic. I can dig some Riri songs. They played, I think, all of the solid ones I can think of, and then a couple. I expected the new Wakanda one, to be honest. I wasn't absolutely heartbroken that it didn't get played, but, solid song choice. The lip syncing was so obvious it was terrible. For a show that you spend tens of millions of dollars on, I just feel like I shouldn't be able to tell that the singer isn't actually singing. Like, help us believe in the magic a little bit, and I'll be happy. The dancing was also awful. If you're dying for some sexualized Oompa Loompas and Snuggies, dancing around the main character like it's a Rocky Horror Picture Show, this was all for you. But keep it to a song, and that's okay. Not the entire set. Like, just give us some variety. I was not impressed with that. And then the no guest performers really bugged me. And I'm not saying that Rihanna can't be a full show on her own, but they had so many opportunities there. I mean, Jay-Z was in the building. Just give him a mic and he can go with New York. Or I know Kanye has been a little MIA and the stuff that he's
Kanye's been IA, but should go MIA for a little bit.
Yeah, he probably was invited then uninvited, I'm guessing, was a possibility.
I don't know if he was ever invited.
I don't care if you have Tom Holland on there with her when she's singing Umbrella. I'll be happy. Like, just keep me excited. last year's show with everyone coming together was so unbelievably awesome. I was just hoping for something a little more or someone more. And babies in utero do not count for me as guest appearances. So
It's a guest appearance. That is a guest appearance. Been to more Super Bowls than a lot of NFL teams. So
True.
that baby's out in front. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the guest appearances, especially because it feels most of the time like they're random. Like they don't necessarily. Last year's was fantastic, but they kind of built it up as it was going to be multiple. But it feels like sometimes they just mash up like the Black Eyed Peas and some random band that's never done a song with the Black Eyed Peas.
And Slash were a fantastic combination. You cannot change my mind about it.
The only reason it was is because that was when the Packers won the Super Bowl. But I mean, it just feels like if Jay-Z, 100% I would have been okay with. Just don't overdo it. I was fine with not having a ton of guest performances. There's no doubt in my mind Kanye was not going to. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Kanye will never be on a Super Bowl halftime show. I feel very confident in saying that at this point in his career. Yikes, we won't touch on that. But if there's any Rihanna stands that are upset with what Jacob said, he doesn't have Twitter, so I don't know how you're going to talk to him. I'm sure you'll figure out some way.
Come see me. It's cool. We can talk about it. No, I enjoy Rihanna. I was just a little disappointed at the lack of showmanship. I don't know. It just seemed a little bland. I enjoyed the actual singing. It was entertaining, but I was a little disappointed.
And I never got the Oompa Loompa vibe from the dancers. I'm not sure how you got the Oompa Loompa. I understand what you're saying, but that part threw me off. At least there was no dancing sharks. That one was still the most confusing I've ever seen. The dancing.
That was a very disappointing show too, for a lot of the same reasons, I'll be honest, but oh well.
Anyway, we'll move on. That is a wrap on this year's Super Bowl. An absolute blast. Super Bowl 57 in the books.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Packers Colts for Super Bowl 58. I'm down with that. Sign me up right now. It's not looking good, but
no,
I'd take it. Aaron Rodgers is out of the dark now. We'll find out what he's doing. But that is going to put a wrap on the NFL season here on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk Minnesota Twins and Washington Senators, the Mount Rushmore. I got a lot to say about one of these players, one of my favorites. We will talk about him and the rest of the squad coming up here on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast.
Many times, drug addiction and mental health crisis often occur at the same time. It's called co-occurring disorder. American behavioral health systems since 1997 have been treating those addicted to drugs, and now they serve those with mental health issues, providing full-service care for those in need of behavioral health intervention. ABHS's therapeutic approach is evidence-based and carried out by their professional care teams. You deserve happiness, hope, and health. For more information, go to AmericanBehavioralHealth.net.
Alderson's Awards West Printwares is your one-stop to tell the world about your school, club, or business. Spread the word on jackets, shirts, hats, and more from Awards West Printwares in Centralia. Awards West Printwares offers fast service of quality products including screen printing and embroidery done on site. They offer a wide variety of advertising specialties at great prices and delivered right to your door. For a full catalog, go online to aldersons.net. For maximum impact, Aldersons Awards West Printwares is ready to serve you today.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast, the Cal Raleigh episode number 29. It is time for the newest edition of our Mount Rushmore series. This week, the Minnesota Twins / Washington Senators that we're going to talk about. Some franchises that have had some real bright spots in their past and then some rough times, but it doesn't feel like they've ever been too rough without their stars to really root for, the stars to like. So all in all, a pretty good franchise, a franchise that no one really has any beef with. We're going to start, though, with, I think, a no-brainer. We're going to start with, in my opinion,
it's a no-brainer as long as you're combining the two. A lot of Twins fans might fight with us on this, but we're going the franchise in its entirety. So
Twins fans can be like the Rihanna stands and hit you up for that. We're going to start off with my opinion, greatest pitcher of all time. And if I told you the greatest pitcher of all time never won a Cy Young, you probably think I was crazy, but that's because Cy Young wasn't around. It's Walter Johnson.
Yep.
The big train. This guy was just an absolute monster. The most shutouts in MLB history with 110 complete game shutouts. Also had 34 career saves, which is a unique stat to have when you're talking about the greatest starting pitcher of all time. Not only the 110 shutouts, 531 complete games in his career, 417 career wins. I'm not going to talk about the losses. I've made my opinion known on that. That is second all time in
Still
career
a pretty
wins.
good ratio.
A 2.17 ERA, 5,914 and a third innings pitched. That's third all time. 1,424 earned runs allowed in 21 seasons. That's an insane stat right there. 3,509 career strikeouts, a 1.061 career whip, franchise leader in ERA, wins, innings, strikeouts, games started, was a career Senator. In 1908, at 20 years old, he pitched one of the most impressive runs in MLB history because he pitched 3 consecutive games against the New York Yankees and allowed 6 hits one game, 4 hits the next, and 2 hits in the third. That's insanity to pitch that close together and allow that few hits. We talked about Ty Cobb last week. Ty Cobb, when talking about Walter Johnson, said his fastball has almost too much speed, that it was almost unfair to face Walter Johnson in that fastball. Had one of the greatest seasons of all time in 1913 when he went 36-7 with a 1.14 ERA. That's pretty remarkable. 10 seasons in his career with an ERA under 2. I know normally I let you talk about like the World Series and stuff, but I love Walter Johnson so much, so I got to talk about this one. Game 7 of the 1924 World Series against the Giants. Manager Bucky Harris said, "Hey," and I quote, "You're the best we got, Walter. We've got to win or lose with you." He threw 4 shutout innings, and the Washington Senators were World Series champions. Seriously, please go to Baseball Reference and look at this guy's page. It's
insane.
Unbelievable. Your eyes are gonna pop. Incredible career. What probably if you gave me the chance to go back and watch one player in MLB history play, there's a good chance I'd go see Walter Johnson.
I kind of hit all of the bases there. I mean, let's see.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No. I get it. I think you mentioned he's second all-time in wins, third all-time in innings pitched, 9th in all-time strikeouts, and 4th in all-time complete games. That is some crazy all MLB numbers. He's also the league leader in times he's been strikeout king, 12 different seasons where he reigned supreme. He holds the record for 3-pitch innings. He had 4 separate 3-pitch innings in his career. I know we love an immaculate inning, but a 3-pitch inning, that's just ridiculous. And I mean, it helped with his innings pitched and everything to go along with it, even though I'm sure if they were 20-pitch innings, he'd still be there in the 9th because that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
He was also one of the most successful hitting pitchers of all time. Most base hits by a pitcher with 547, and he had 13 of his 21 seasons where he had over a 200 batting average. That's pretty solid for a pitcher. He was a 2-time MVP. He won 3 Triple Crowns, had 5 ERA titles, and like you mentioned, helped bring home the only World Series championship of the Senators before they moved up to the cold north. And like so many more players on these lists that we've done, he would have had so many more awards in his career if they existed back then. And it's funny you mentioned a Ty Cobb quote because I too have a Ty Cobb quote of his that's completely different. Ty Cobb called him the most powerful arm ever turned loose in a ballpark. So just a crazy player. If you can, they have some videos of him pitching. Yeah. They are so fun to watch. Something about a side-armed flamethrower. Just, it's so cool. They're so dangerous that, I mean, go and watch, go and read up. One of the best pitchers of all time.
A cheat code, 100% on the baseball field. So Walter Johnson was a no-brainer. Let's move now to a Minnesota Twin who is also pretty much a no-brainer. That's Rod Carew, one of the best hitters in franchise history, probably the best hitter in franchise history. 334, 393, 448 slash line with the Twins, 74 home runs, 733 RBIs, 2,085 hits, and 841 OPS. Franchise leader in batting average, on base percentage. This is where things get a little weird because it's some of his biography. Was born on a train in Panama and was named after the doctor that delivered him. That is wild. Then you learn to start his baseball career, he used a broomstick and bottle caps as his bat and balls. That's a drill I'm sure people could use to really improve their eyesight, their eye strength in hitting the baseball. Never played high school baseball, and all of a sudden he comes to the MLB and just absolutely dominates, helped the Twins win the inaugural AL West title. Just a hitting machine really all the way through. And I'm not sure, I know people know about Rod Crew, but I'm not sure if they really have dug into his stats. While you're checking out Walter Johnson, go ahead and open up another tab and look at Rod Crew because he was sensational.
Yeah. You're doing something right when they name the batting title after you. You can't say much more than that. I'm going to, but he was a Rookie of the Year. He was an MVP. He was a Roberto Clemente recipient. He was a 12-time All-Star as a Twin. That was to start his 18 straight, adding later on in his career. And he took home that batting title 7 different times, including 4 in a row. That 7 times is only trailing Ty Cobb in all of the MLB. He did lead the MLB in hits 3 different times, still holds the team record for, as you said, batting average and on-base percentage. Incredibly disciplined at the plate. He had more walks than strikeouts in over half of his career. More walks than strikeouts. Just incredible. And he loved to steal bases. He stole around the diamond. He stole home more than his fair share of times. Like you said, offensively, one of the best to ever do it. And he wore that Twins uniform more than anyone else.
Just an incredible player. We talk about 5-tool players. He was up there, didn't necessarily hit for power, but he never really tried. We talked about that with Ty Cobb last week. He wasn't ever trying to do that. So Rod Crew was another easy one. Let's hop into our third similarity, and then we'll diverge. We're going to go to the only player on our list who played for both the Washington Senators and the Minnesota Twins, Harmon Killebrew. We just talked about the contact base hit machine in Rod Crew. That's not Killebrew's game. Killebrew was looking to make baseballs explode. That's what he was doing. 260, 383, 518 slash line. You see how those numbers just absolutely skyrocket. 475 home runs, 1,325 RBIs, 1,713 hits, a 901 OPS. Franchise leader in slugging, games played, total bases, home runs, and RBIs. There was a joke amongst other teams and on his team that when he hit line drives, he was putting opposing players in jeopardy, and they weren't talking about infielders. They were worried about outfielders getting smacked with a line drive. Helped earn him the nickname Killer, also because of his last name, Killebrew. Killer just flowed, which was ironic because off the field, he was very quiet. He was very gentle is how he was described. And I've got a quote for him too. They asked him if he had any hobbies, what he liked to do. And he said, and I quote, "Well, I like to wash dishes, I guess." That was just who he was. He was a baseball player. He wanted to get on the field, hit a ball about as far as he could. And you want to talk about launch angle and distance. This guy was doing it before the StatCast era. So I'm very curious where he would have fallen in the StatCast era, how far some of these baseballs would have gone. Just an absolute monster hitting the baseball. Unfortunately, passed away much too young, but man, this guy was sensational. Just that mean, rugged baseball masher.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it all. There was also 13 All-Star games, an MVP, and just a shoe-in Hall of Famer. He was a top 5 MVP candidate 6 different times in his career. And he played all but his final season with the Twins/Senators. Very few have made their mark on an organization like he has. He had 40 plus home runs 8 separate times in his career. You mentioned some of the franchise records he holds. One of my favorites, sac flies. You got that power hitter that is not afraid to, take one for the team, get that one runner in. You have way too many that just home run or pop out. And that was definitely not the case for him. And like you said, one of the nicest guys on or off the field. Even the umpires sang his praises. They had a quote from, I didn't write down the umpire it was from, so don't MLA me. But we've got, I'd call a tough strike on him, and he would turn around and say approvingly, "Good call." And he was the same way in the field. Who does that remind you of? I'm curious. When it wasn't going your way and you're like, you know what, that was a good call. I'm thinking Andrew Luck. That was a good hit.
I was thinking baseball, so I wasn't thinking.
Okay, well that's fair. No, that it just that so in love with the game that he just enjoys watching the sport, even if it's not going his way. And there's a reason when you visit Mall of America, you enter through Killebrew Drive. That just, he was Minnesota baseball when they came to the area.
And both of us have actually been on that road in that mall in our lives. So that's pretty cool to be able to say. So now is where we will go off the same path. I'll say bye to Jacob going one way because I'm going to stay back in the past in the Washington Senators era. I guess I'll make Twins fans mad since you made the Rihanna stands mad. I am going to go with Sam Rice. Sam Rice was a hitting machine. You expect when we were listing off what Rod Carew led the franchise, and you probably expected a lot more to be named. The reason he doesn't lead the franchise in a lot of those offensive categories is because Sam Rice does. 322, 374, 427 slash line. Only hit 34 home runs in his long career. That was okay, though. That's not what they needed him to do. 1,077 RBIs, 2,987 hits, 801 career OPS, 1,466 career runs with Washington. He was the first great position player in Senators history. He was the guy who kind of was that focal point in the lineup, the guy you had to be careful with. Franchise leader, and buckle up, this is going to be a long one. Runs, hits, at-bats, singles, doubles, triples, and second and stolen bases. So he was practically, when he was getting on base, it was practically a double, regardless of if it was a single, a walk, whatever. He was going to be on second base. Actually started his career as a pitcher. Wasn't a hitter when he first broke into the league. Pitched only 9 games and then switched to outfield. And I'm going to go ahead and say that was the right call for Rice to go ahead and do. Was only 5'9". So he made it work with, being a smaller guy, not the guy you'd expect to go out there and light it up as a baseball player. Only played 97 games, not with Washington, played with Cleveland in his final year in 1934. But, this guy was consistent. He was going to be out there, led the league in at-bats 3 different times, led the league in plate appearances once, led the league in games multiple times, led the league in hits a couple of times with 216, led the league in triples one year with 18 triples and 63 stolen bases in one season. So Hall of Famer, again, was part of that one World Series for the Washington Senators with Johnson. So Sam Rice, definitely a guy that I guarantee a lot of people haven't heard of because of the time frame he played in and playing with Johnson. But this guy was just a menace at the top of the order for Washington for a lot of years.
Yeah, those stats really make your eyes pop. I went with someone a little more modern that I feel like Twins fans connect with a lot more, and that's Kirby Puckett. He was one of those guys that you think they made baseball fun to watch, especially growing up in the 90s. He definitely made it fun to be a Twins fan. They were the most successful of a team they've ever been when he was a captain for him. 318, 360, 477 slash line with 207 home runs, 1,085 ribbies, 450 walks, 2,304 hits, and almost 45 wins above replacement. He paired those stats with 10 All-Star Game selections, 6 Golden Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, a batting title, an All-Star Game MVP, and a Roberto Clemente Award. He does hold the franchise records for hits, runs, and total bases. Just the Twins. We're putting that on there. And he did all of that in a 12-year career. He was forced to retire from medical complications, giving him vision problems, and later on another that gone far too soon. But guy loved as a player, as loved as a player can be from his team. And that just barely pushed him above some of those with more impressive stats and longer careers.
And again, that's part of it. We definitely have to look into that. So there were a lot of guys who we could have thrown on a list, especially if we didn't include the Senators. There are a couple of guys in the modern era that we could talk about. Honorable mentions for me, I had Kirby Puckett on my honorable mention. Bert Blyleven was also on there. And Joe Mauer, who just completely altered the catching position. He was the one who made it famous to move a catcher from behind the plate to first base to kind of prolong their career a little bit more. So those were my three. I know you have, I think, another one that I didn't have.
Yeah, actually, I think a couple. Joe Mauer, Bert Blyleven, Johan Santana, another very short but prolific career, and then Torrey Hunter. I think. Did you have?
I did. Okay. I've got his bobblehead though.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, the
Minnesota Twins
right?
bobblehead. I think we got full size.
Okay,
I
got the mini 3-incher one. Him and I don't remember who the other one was now. It was from when you visited the ballpark, actually.
They gave out the full size ones that time, but I'm sure they had some for sale. Torrey Hunter was loved in Minnesota, kind of a menace for the Mariners when he went to the Angels, but helped them win a game by dropping a fly ball. So there is our Minnesota Twins / Washington Senators Mount Rushmore. Just to go through our four again, I had Walter Johnson, Rod Carew, Harmon Killebrew, and Sam Rice. You also had Johnson, Carew, Killebrew, and you threw in Kirby Puckett as well. So a fun one, a tough one that had all sorts of great stories attached to them, though. This one was fun to dig in on. Jacob, we're only down to 9 more teams in baseball to do these Mount Rushmore lists, current active teams, I should say. Next up will be another AL West team in the Oakland Athletics. Okay. Names already popping into my head. I can guarantee one's going to be on our list. This is going to be an interesting one because of the Moneyball era without those big stars. So we're going to really have to dig into that one. That'll be coming up in a couple of weeks on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Don't go anywhere, though. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, we're going to talk about baseball now. We're going to give our all underrated teams. That's a player for each position. We're going to give you the parameters as well. This one was tough. We really had to put on our thinking caps. That's coming up next on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast.
This welding program is centered around getting your state structural certifications. They come in, take the welding core classes, get their work done that is pertinent to what they're going to do out into the field. So the industry of welding is booming right now.
There's construction, there's pipe fitting, there's sheet metal, there's opening your own fab shop. Always going to have an opportunity to be a welder. We always need welders.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. It is time for our final segment of episode number 29. It is our all underrated MLB teams. Now, shout out Talking Baseball. I listened to their podcast. This is what gave me the idea. I wanted us to dig into it ourselves. So we have some different parameters. So the rules are player can never have won an award, Rookie of the Year, Silver Slugger, Gold Glove, all those encompassing.
That disqualified a lot of my folks.
A lot of players.
One Golden Glove 3 years ago, and nope.
They're gone. They cannot have an all-star appearance unless they have over 3 years of service time. Then they are allowed one. If they have two, they're out. Two or more, they're done. They cannot have made the All-MLB team, which most of the guys who make the All-MLB team have won an award. So that one didn't trim it down any further. No 9-figure contracts, which in today's age cuts out a lot of players. And they have to have a minimum of 2 years of service time. So that takes out a lot of the rookies that we saw from last year. Might be on this list in a couple of years. Some of them won't be Julio because he's going to win an MVP. Anyway, so
And
those
he already
were
won
our
plenty
parameters.
of awards. He couldn't.
But MVP is the one we want.
Yeah.
So there is our parameters. Now let's go ahead and dig in. We're going to start with the catcher. And this is why it was fitting for this episode, something that we didn't even think about until we started. Cal Raleigh was it for both of us. This guy's just a masher, especially last season. When you just dive in to what he did last year, he got off to such a slow start. So the batting average down just 211 last year, 284 on base percentage, 489 slugging percentage, which shows how talented he was. 78 hits, 46 runs, 27 home runs, 63 RBIs. He was a masher as soon as he came back. Also, that rarity of a switch hitting catcher. You don't see that hardly at all anymore. You very rarely see switch hitters anymore. So to have a switch hitting catcher that is also a brick wall with a cannon of an arm behind the dish, Cal Raleigh, kind of that 5-tool catcher that you want. If he can keep on this trajectory, he is not going to be underrated for very much longer.
Yeah, and it's almost to his disservice that he's a switch hitter because he does not get the rest he needs, and it scares me every single time. Remember, we were talking at the beginning of last year on, I am scared about our catchers. We need some depth there. And then this guy just completed his development. His Jedi training is done. 27 home runs. I mean, that's just incredible. 3.8 wins above replacement. People are talking, they're chirping. They know he's going to have some breakout years where he will not qualify for this list very long.
Yeah, and this year they will have that depth. Tom Murphy coming back will be the backup. So that's a scary one, too. I'm going to enjoy that. Let's go ahead and move to first base. I went with CJ Cron, the Cron Zone, as fans call him. In 2 seasons, Colorado is where he's really broken out, and I know that's a hitters-friendly ballpark, but he doesn't have nearly as much help surrounding him as he did with the Angels. Since joining Colorado, a 268, 343, 496 slash line, 57 home runs, 194 RBIs. Just to compare that, in 4 seasons with the Angels, he had a total of 59 home runs and 213 RBIs. He will fly past those numbers this year. 280 hits, 149 runs. We kind of talked about this guy around the All-Star game last year, whether or not he deserved to be in it. The dude hits bombs. I got to watch him in person, go yard, and the ball sounds different jumping off of his bat. A pretty solid defender as well, kind of the underappreciated guy on that team with guys like Chris Bryant coming in, making those big splashes. So Cron Zone was making my list. I love it.
Yeah, I like what you did there. I had to go Hoskins. He was 4th place in the Rookie of the Year running 6 years ago and hasn't been much for consideration since. But 242, 353, 492 slash line, 148 home runs, 405 RBIs, 588 hits in that time, and above 11 wins above replacement. I mean, you just can't keep snubbing him. He's breaking through. A lot of teams would kill for a solid first baseman like that.
Yeah, very good. A lot of help around him. Now, over to second base, I'm going to go with Tyro Estrada. If I could roll my R's, I would have there, but I can't. So please don't judge me for that. But I mean, since he came over from the Yankees to the Giants, 2 seasons with the Giants, not eye-popping numbers, 263, 324, 415 slash line, pretty solid for a second baseman, 21 home runs, 84 RBIs, 90 runs scored. That's what he's there to do, get on base for those big boppers. 160 hits, 26 doubles, 22 stolen bases, has some speed. He reminds me of those guys at the bottom of those early 2010s Giants lineups where it's just, hey, get on base, and then we're going to let guys like Buster Posey and Brandon Belt drive you in. Not a tremendous defender, so he needs to get a little bit better there, show off that range a little bit more, not going to have a lot of errors, but he's definitely off and running, could be an integral part of the Giants in the upcoming future. I'm not going to say rebuild, but in the upcoming future.
Right. Not intentional rebuild, at least.
Yeah.
I was noticing I have a lot of longevity here compared to you. So 9 years of service time for Jorge Polanco, and it just been a solid second baseman that entire time. 270, 334, 445 slash line. And I'm looking at these numbers, and compared to the slash lines we see on our Mount Rushmores, they're just nothing. But these are some solid MLB players that a lot of teams would just die for. 399 runs batted in, 98 homers, 15.3 wins above replacement. That's a solid middle infielder that they're lucky to have him.
And remember, he was playing behind Brian Dozier for a good chunk of those seasons. So
Right.
He's just finally becoming the guy in Minnesota. And I'm glad you talked about the comparisons from our Mount Rushmore to these guys. It just shows you how great those Mount Rushmore guys are. So I'm glad you looked at that. Now we're going to hop over to third base because that's how you do it. It's the 5 position. Yandy Diaz is my third baseman. When we talk about the Rays, it feels every year we're worried about the offense. In 2 years as the starter for Tampa Bay at third, 276, 378, 405 slash line, 259 hits. That's a lot of hits, 22 homers, 121 RBIs, 133 runs scored, 53 doubles, more walks than strikeouts, which in today's game is eye-popping every time you see that.
Mm-hmm.
Negative in defensive runs saved, but only 7 errors. So again, it's the range for him, not really able to go too far, but things you can improve on. Was second in almost every offensive category for Tampa Bay last year. Had to step up with Wander Franco out for a good chunk of the season. And hey, they made the wild card. So all in all, not a bad year for Tampa Bay. Yandy Diaz, probably going to see those numbers drop down a little bit, but the team as a whole will get better with Franco back.
Yeah. I went Brian Hayes. I mean, only 3 years in the league, already 8.5 WAR. 261, 326, 386 slash line, 248 hits, 90 ribbies. I mean, you just that's what you're looking for there with a hitter.
And I know a lot of people don't like watching Pirates games. Please watch them with O'Neill Cruz and Brian Hayes on that side of the infield.
Yes.
Oh, take my money. I'm going to watch a lot of Pirates games this year.
And a lot of people are like, what do Pirates do with them? Like, it's almost like that's a training camp for the rest of the league, and they're just mouth-watering over these young guys that are so fun to watch, so potent.
Or the Pirates are going to be back in the playoffs here in the near future. We'll see what they do. Need some help pitching. We'll talk about teams here in a few weeks. Shortstop, I'm going to go with Willy Adames, a guy who went from the Rays to the Milwaukee Brewers. So he's been in Milwaukee for about a year and a half, and he's been their best hitter in that span. 258, 325, 483 slash line, 51 home runs, 156 RBIs, 144 runs scored, 238 hits in a year and a half. He, unlike those other two guys, tremendous defense, really, really solid. Led the Brewers in RBIs in 2022 with 98, second in hits and home runs. Only played in 139 games, so he probably could have taken first place in all those categories if he didn't deal with some injuries and some fatigue issues. Has been asked to be more of a run producer since joining Milwaukee and has done just that. So, I mean, a guy who can produce runs like that, a shortstop, probably going to get a big contract here soon.
Yeah. I went with Nico Horner. I mean, 4 years in the league, but we're only going to focus on last year because he finally got a chance to shine as a full-time starter. So 281, 327, 410, 55 ribbies, 4.5 wins above replacement. I'm excited to see what this kid does. And especially, I mean, you mentioned shortstop, you're needing that defensive prowess. This guy's exactly what they're needing to build on that infield.
You give some time, every shortstop's going to be out of the contention because of those contracts.
Yes.
Let's move to the outfield. I'm going to start with a guy we see in the division. That's Taylor Ward of the Angels. 256, 333, 431 slash line in 5 seasons with LA, 38 home runs, 120 RBIs, 249 hits, 140 runs, 49 doubles. Has a pretty solid arm. You don't want to test it too much. Finally getting some opportunity to play. Of course, Mike Trout is always going to be there as long as he's healthy. But now with Joe Adell gone, he's going to get some more runtime out there in the outfield. Was second in hits for the Angels last year, as well as second batting average and on-base percentage. higher average than Shohei Ohtani. Pretty impressive. Third in runs. Never going to have to be the run producer, the guy on that team. Just get on base. That's what he does. That's what he's done. And with Jared Walsh, Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani to drive him in, you have a good recipe there.
Yeah, remember the hot start he got off to last year, and we were just like, what is going on with this kid? Yeah, he's going to be fun to watch. I went with the California team too, Jerickson Profar. So 3 years with the Padres. We're going to focus on his Padre years when he really started to develop. Hitting 244, 333, 375, 270 hits over those 3 years, 116 ribbies, 26 home runs, and 22 stolen bases. I mean, I know some guys are doing that in a year, but that's still pretty impressive to do over a 3-year time. And 4.4 wins above replacement for him.
Not too shabby at all. Remember, everyone had labeled him a bust after those stints with the Rangers and A's.
Yeah.
Not a bust anymore. Pretty solid player. Now let's move to a guy both of us have on our list, Hunter Renfroe. Another guy who's not the Las Vegas Raiders receiver. They spell their last name differently. Going on his 5th team in the last 5 seasons. Since that COVID-shortened season, though, he's been a different player. He's just seeing the ball, hitting the ball a lot better. 257, 315, 497 slash line since the COVID year, 256 hits, 168 RBIs, 151 runs as well, 56 doubles, a fantastic arm in the outfield, better than Ward. Ward has a pretty solid one. Always going to have a fit on some team as long as he keeps getting on base because his defense is so good. He sets the table for other guys. He's going to be joining Taylor Ward now in Anaheim. Kind of going to try and fit that Cole Calhoun brand new Mariner. I don't know if you heard that. Going to try and fit that role as we move forward. So hopefully he doesn't haunt the Mariners as much as Calhoun did.
Honestly, I think we could fit Hunter Renfroe on both Hunter Renfroes on the underrated list.
Yeah.
But we're going to go with the baseball outfielder. Not much more you can say when there's no awards. You know, I give you stats, you give me awards. These guys don't get awards. So 10.7 wins above replacement over his 7 years. Just solid outfielder. You know, teams are looking for that depth, and Angels made a move. They knew what they wanted, so we'll see what he can do this year.
I'll always let you take the WAR stat because let's move to, I think, maybe the best player I have on my list anywhere. Okay, second best player, best offensive player, Anthony Santander. Dude's a monster with the Baltimore Orioles. Had a massive breakout season last year. Just a power-hitting slugger. I'm just going to look at last year's stats for him. 33 home runs, which led Baltimore, 89 RBIs, 455 slugging percentage, 24 doubles, 138 hits, 78 runs. This dude was a masher, was probably better than Cedric Mullins last year, and Mullins is a very good player. He had a down year, but still a pretty solid year last season. Does what he needs to do defensively, not going to be a liability, but not going to be, a gold glove outfielder, which is just fine with what he produces on offense. He's not going to be an Oriole at the end of the season. I think he gets traded and could be that sneaky trade piece that someone goes out and gets and puts them over a hump, gets them to the World Series. Remember that name, Anthony Santander. The dude's an absolute monster.
All right. Now, for my last outfielder, I'm not even going to call it wishful thinking. I'm going to call it I have insider trading. And that's going to be, Ham Swaggerty of the Seattle Mariners. Has 3 years service time with the Mariners, but he hardly played the first 2. He's been hurt. He is building up as a player, and last year he just really was the missing piece. I mean, when he was in the lineup, they were winning. So as a Mariner, 74 hits, 22 stolen bases, 51 runs, only 8 home runs, not a power hitter. You're waiting for the day, I hear, maybe.
I can't. When he hits a grand slam, Swaggerty will be born.
See, there we go. 237, 308, 372. He's fast. He's good. He's going to stay healthy this year. 2.2 wins above replacement just last year alone. And that was with some minor injuries as well. He's prime. He's ready for a breakout year. He's not going to be a nobody any longer. I know Mariner fans know his name. Other teams' fans are going to know his name.
Yeah, and it won't be just because he's doing bad things against their team. It'll be because he's doing bad things against every team. So
Exactly.
there you have that. Let's go on to the player that I think is the best player on this list. We're going to go to our starting pitcher, Julio Urias. This dude is sensitive. I know you say his name with more flair than I do, but guess what? I can't do that. A 2.82 career ERA, and that's getting off to a terrible start. Remember, this kid came up as a teenager, and he was not quite ready to be that starter.
Right.
Only been a full-time starter, really, the last 2 years, and in those 2 seasons, the ERA is even lower at 2.57. He's only going to be 26 this year, so he is still just reaching into his prime. Had 361 strikeouts and 360 and 2/3 innings in the last 2 years. That's more strikeouts than innings. 37 wins over the last 2 seasons. That's over half of the starts he's made in that span. An 0.990 whip. I think this is the year where it's going to get him disqualified from the list. He should have been an all-star last year. He'll probably be an all-star this year. He'll still make the list. But, man, I could see him getting a Cy Young. This guy is special. He is filthy and still just 26 years old. Incredible.
Yeah. I had difficulty adding him to this list because, in my opinion, he's not underrated. People know exactly. You can't be underrated and be one of the Dodgers' best pitchers. That just it doesn't compute. But it fits the filter, so I had to include him. Yeah, best player on this list by far. Going to be disqualified either by awards or contract very, very soon. He's going to be a big name pitcher.
World Baseball Classic, he's going to pitch for Team Mexico in their opener. It was just announced today, so that is going to be a fun one to watch. Now let's move to the final position, our reliever. And we started with our Mariner bias. We're going to end a little bit with our Mariner bias. Andres Munoz. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, San Diego, for what you gave us. It just seems to get better.
Often. They give us so many gifts.
Yeah, we appreciate all of it. This dude didn't pitch in a competitive game in 2020. Pitched in 2021 in just one game in the major leagues. Pretty solid outing. And then this last year was just straight up filthy. A 2.49 ERA in 65 innings pitched. The heat on the fastball combined with the disgusting slider should be illegal. The things he does to hitters, it's just not even fair. If you're a righty, good luck. I don't even know how you attack him. He is going to be the next dominant closer. You and I were both upset when they traded Edwin Diaz. Munoz could end up being just as good, if not better, than Edwin Diaz. This guy is special. He should be the Mariners closer, and I hope he is this year. Just disgusting.
People thinking that the cartel is the most dangerous thing out of Sinaloa, Mexico, have not seen this guy pitch. It is terrifying. I mean, hitting 102 and then a slider that could hit 77 or could hit 87, could hit 96. If you are a righty, go sit down. Like you said, we were heartbroken about Diaz. We said, no, if you're going to have to rebuild, you keep a cornerstone like that. Jerry knows. We have faith. Wow. Yeah. Big. Like you said, I really hope that Mariners go to a traditional closer role because he will fit. He will get more strikeouts than batters on. He will get more strikeouts than inning pitched. We were baffled by, Edwin Diaz averaging, what was it, like 2.7 Ks per inning there. This guy could be that easily. And he's developing more pitches. It's not fair. It's going to be fun to see.
My brother, when he first saw him pitch against Minnesota last year, said, who's this Munzo guy? He knows his name now because he's insane. So that does it. My brother's an idiot. That does it, though, for episode 29 of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. We thank you for hanging out with us. Next week, I promise we're going to have NBA for all you basketball fans. It will be back. Luke is back in town. It's going to be a little bit easier to record from now on. He'll be on here. We're also going to have the Oakland A's Mount Rushmore, and it'll almost be time for the World Baseball Classic. Jacob and I are going to really dig into that. We're going to have a couple of big baseball episodes coming up, World Baseball Classic, then our baseball previews. Cannot wait for that. So we will see you here in about a couple weeks on the Kingsman Sports Podcast, episode 30.